Not every car can be a beauty, and for those on a tight budget, the options sometimes meant driving some truly unfortunate-looking vehicles. These cars weren't just affordable, they were downright ugly with strange proportions, bizarre styling, and questionable design choices. For many, these were the only cars within reach, but they certainly didn't win any style points. Ready to see the 12 ugliest cars that only those on a tight budget could afford? Prepare for some serious eyesores. The Fiat 600 Multipla, produced between 1956 and 1967, was a pioneering vehicle in many respects, often regarded as a precursor to the modern minivan. It was based on the Fiat 600 chassis and was designed to maximize space efficiency in a small, compact car. Despite its innovative design and groundbreaking concept for a vehicle that could transport multiple passengers in such a small footprint, the Fiat 600 Multipla ultimately failed to capture the market in a meaningful way. Its impracticality, lack of power, and unconventional styling contributed to its limited appeal, and over time, it became known more for its quirks than its success. One of the key reasons for the Multipla's failure was its cramped interior. While the car could technically seat 6 people, doing so often meant sacrificing comfort and any semblance of storage space. The layout was impressive in theory. The rear seats could be folded flat, allowing for different configurations. But in practice, the interior felt too tight for long-distance travel or for families wanting a more comfortable ride. With the engine positioned at the rear of the vehicle and minimal space in the cabin, passengers often found themselves squeezed together, making journeys less than ideal for anything beyond short urban trips. In a market where cars were increasingly expected to offer a balance of space, comfort, and functionality, the Multipla's lack of roominess stood out as a significant drawback. In addition to its cramped conditions, the Multipla was also underpowered. Equipped with a 633 cubic centimeter engine, the car was meant to be efficient for city driving, but it struggled when fully loaded with passengers. The small engine provided just enough power for light urban transport, but any attempt to travel with multiple passengers or to drive at higher speeds pushed the engine to its limits. This made the car impractical for families or individuals who needed a vehicle capable of more than just short, slow trips around town. Even on the open road, the Multipla's top speed was modest, making it unsuitable for highway driving or long-distance travel. The combination of low horsepower and the additional weight of passengers often made the driving experience sluggish and unresponsive, leaving drivers frustrated with the vehicle's lack of performance. Styling was another area where the Fiat 600 Multipla was polarizing. The car had a somewhat unusual, even odd design, which looked as if the front end of a standard Fiat 600 had been extended upward to accommodate more passengers. The bubble-like shape and tall, narrow front made the car look more like a microbus than a conventional car, earning it a reputation for being strange-looking. While the vehicle's appearance was certainly unique and functional in terms of providing more headroom for passengers, it didn't appeal to the aesthetic sensibilities of many consumers. Compared to the sleek, streamlined designs that were becoming more popular in the 1950s and 1960s, the Multipla's boxy, upright form seemed awkward and out of place. Another significant issue was the car's practicality. Although it was intended to be a family vehicle, the limited engine power combined with the cramped conditions and quirky design meant that many families found it impractical for their needs. The Multipla struggled with the demands of hauling both passengers and cargo, and the idea of using it as a daily family car became less appealing over time. For many buyers, it was difficult to justify purchasing a car that, while innovative in its use of space, was ultimately too compromised in terms of performance and comfort. The Fiat 600 Multipla did find success in some niche markets, particularly in Europe's dense urban areas where space was at a premium. It was often used as a taxi in cities like Rome, where its compact size allowed it to navigate narrow streets and busy traffic with ease. The vehicle's ability to transport multiple passengers in such a small footprint made it a practical choice for short-distance commercial use. And for a time, the Multipla became a familiar sight in certain urban settings. However, outside of these specific contexts, the car's limitations made it difficult to gain widespread popularity, especially in markets where larger, more powerful family cars were the norm. Ultimately, the Fiat 600 Multiplus failure can be attributed to its inability to strike a balance between innovation and practicality. The Volga Gaz 24, produced between 1970 and 1992 in the Soviet Union, was intended to be a luxury vehicle for government officials, high-ranking members of society, and taxi services. For many, it symbolized the pinnacle of Soviet automotive engineering, a large and stately sedan that was meant to rival Western luxury cars. However, despite its aspirational positioning within the Soviet auto market, the Gaz 24 ultimately failed to live up to its luxury billing due to a combination of poor build quality, outdated design, and subpar performance. Its long production span, with few updates, further tarnished its reputation over time. One of the primary issues with the Gaz 24 was its lackluster build quality. Although it was positioned as a luxury car in the Soviet market, the vehicle often suffered from manufacturing defects and inconsistencies. Soviet factories were not known for their precision or quality control, and this affected the Gaz 24 as well. Cars would frequently leave the factory with misaligned panels, poor paint finishes, and loose-fitting interior components. This lack of refinement not only disappointed buyers who expected a luxury experience, but also led to frequent mechanical failures. Owners often had to deal with malfunctioning electrical systems, leaking oil, and poor sealing around doors and windows, all of which contributed to the car's overall unreliability. Mechanical reliability was another major issue that plagued the Gaz 24. Despite its robust appearance, the car's engine and drivetrain were prone to breakdowns, especially when subjected to the harsh conditions of Soviet roads and the extreme Russian climate. The 2.4-liter four-cylinder engine, though adequate for basic driving, lacked the refinement and power expected of a luxury car. The Gaz 24's engine was noisy, underpowered, and struggled to provide smooth acceleration, particularly when carrying multiple passengers or loaded with cargo. Furthermore, the car's suspension system was designed to handle rough roads, but it often led to a bumpy and uncomfortable ride, making long trips unpleasant for passengers. The outdated design of the Gaz 24 further contributed to its decline over time. Introduced in 1970, the car initially featured a boxy, formal appearance that aligned with the conservative tastes of Soviet leadership. However, as the decades wore on and global automotive design evolved, the Gaz 24 remained virtually unchanged. While Western car manufacturers were embracing sleeker, more aerodynamic designs with advanced technologies, the Gaz 24 stuck to its utilitarian, blocky aesthetic. The lack of significant updates to its exterior styling or interior features made the car feel antiquated by the 1980s, and its dated appearance began to contrast sharply with the more modern vehicles that were entering the global market. The lack of innovation extended beyond just the car's design. Over its long production run, the Gaz 24 received only minimal mechanical upgrades, leaving it increasingly uncompetitive in terms of both performance and technology. Features that were becoming standard in Western cars, such as power steering, air conditioning, and advanced safety features, were either absent or poorly implemented in the Gaz 24. Even as Soviet citizens began to gain access to foreign cars in the later years of the USSR, the Gaz 24's limited technology and performance made it an undesirable choice compared to imported vehicles. In terms of performance, the Gaz 24 was also lackluster. While it was designed to handle the rough, unpaved roads of the Soviet countryside, its underpowered engine and heavy body meant that it was slow and cumbersome to drive. The car struggled to reach higher speeds, and its handling was awkward and unresponsive, especially in comparison to Western cars. On the highway, the Gaz 24 felt out of place, with its sluggish acceleration and poor braking performance making it ill-suited for fast-paced driving. This was particularly disappointing for those who expected a more dynamic driving experience from a car marketed as a luxury sedan. Furthermore, the Gaz 24's longevity became more of a liability than an asset. While it was produced for over 2 decades, the lack of significant updates or redesigns caused the car to become increasingly outdated as automotive technology advanced around the world. The car's outdated components, coupled with its inefficient engine, made it a relic in an era when consumers were demanding more fuel-efficient, technologically advanced vehicles. By the time production ended in the early 1990s, the GAZ-24 had become a symbol of Soviet-era stagnation, a car that had failed to adapt to the changing times. Despite its failures, the GAZ-24 still holds a place in Soviet history as one of the most iconic cars of its era. It was a status symbol for those fortunate enough to own one, and its presence on Soviet roads was ubiquitous. The Borgward Isabella, produced between 1954 and 1962, was initially a symbol of post-war German automotive innovation and style. When it was first introduced, the Isabella quickly gained popularity due to its attractive design, advanced engineering, and relatively affordable price. Borgward, the company behind the Isabella, had carved out a niche in the competitive automotive market by offering cars that combined performance, style, and affordability. However, despite its early success, the Borgward Isabella became entangled in a series of financial and mechanical problems that would ultimately lead to the collapse of the company. One of the Isabella's key strengths was its design. It featured a sleek, aerodynamic shape that was ahead of its time, with flowing lines and a well-proportioned body. The car's elegant appearance, combined with a comfortable and well-appointed interior, made it appealing to middle-class buyers in post-war Germany, as well as to customers in international markets. The Isabella was seen as a stylish and modern alternative to the more utilitarian vehicles offered by competitors like Volkswagen. It came in various body styles, including sedans, coupes, and convertibles, which helped broaden its appeal. In particular, the Isabella Coupe became an icon of 1950s German automotive design, praised for its sporty yet refined looks. However, despite its aesthetic appeal, the Isabella had significant mechanical issues that affected its long-term reliability. One of the primary problems was rust. The car was prone to rusting, especially in climates where roads were salted during winter. The metal used in the car's construction wasn't as resistant to corrosion as it needed to be, and many owners found that their cars would begin to show signs of rust far too quickly. This issue was particularly damaging to Borgward's reputation, as rust not only compromised the car's appearance, but also its structural integrity. In an era where long-lasting durability was becoming a key factor for consumers, the Isabella's susceptibility to rust became a serious liability. Mechanical reliability also became a persistent issue for the Isabella. While it was initially praised for its engineering, particularly its smooth ride and relatively powerful engine for the time, the car's drivetrain and other components were prone to failure. Owners reported problems with the transmission, which could be unreliable and difficult to repair. The Isabella also had issues with its cooling system, which sometimes led to overheating, especially in warmer climates. These mechanical failures, combined with the rust problems, created a perception that the Isabella, while stylish, was not a car that could be trusted for long-term use. Borgward's financial management also played a significant role in the Isabella's decline. Carl F.W. Borgward, the company's founder, was a brilliant engineer, but his business practices were often seen as disorganized and overly ambitious. Borgward expanded his company rapidly in the 1950s, producing a wide range of vehicles under several different brands, including Lloyd and Goliath. This diversification stretched the company's resources thin, and Borgward began to struggle with cash flow problems. Although the Isabella sold reasonably well, the company's financial difficulties made it hard for Borgward to invest in improving the car or addressing the rust and reliability issues that were tarnishing its reputation. As Borgward's financial situation worsened, the company found itself unable to keep up with its competitors. By the early 1960s, more established manufacturers like Mercedes-Benz and BMW were producing cars that not only matched the Isabella in terms of style, but also surpassed it in terms of build quality and reliability. The financial mismanagement at Borgward meant that the company couldn't invest in updating the Isabella or developing new models to compete with these rivals. As a result, sales began to decline, and the company's mounting debts led to a crisis. In 1961, despite still being the largest privately owned car manufacturer in Germany, Borgward was forced into bankruptcy. The company's financial collapse was controversial, with some suggesting that Borgward could have survived with better management or government assistance. However, by the time of its closure, the damage to Borgward's reputation was already done, largely due to the problems with the Isabella. The car, once a symbol of post-war German innovation, had become synonymous with the company's inability to maintain quality and control its finances. The downfall of Borgward and the Isabella serves as a cautionary tale of how financial mismanagement and product issues can sink even a once promising car. The Isabella, with its stylish design and innovative features, had the potential to be a long-term success. The Zündapp Janus, produced between 1957 and 1958, stands as one of the most unusual and quirky vehicles in automotive history. Named after the Roman god Janus, who is often depicted with two faces looking in opposite directions, the car reflected this concept quite literally in its design. With doors that opened from both the front and the rear, and seating that faced both directions, the Janus was a unique but ultimately impractical solution to a post-war need for affordable, compact transportation. Despite its creative approach, the Janus was a commercial failure, and production ceased after just 1 year. The Zündapp company was primarily known for producing motorcycles, and like many manufacturers in the post-war period, sought to enter the car market to meet the growing demand for small, economical vehicles. The Janus was their attempt to do just that, but it came with a design that was both innovative and problematic. The most striking feature of the Janus was its dual opening doors, one at the front and one at the rear, giving passengers access from either end of the vehicle. Inside, the car had back-to-back bench seating, with the front row facing forward and the rear row facing backward, making it feel as though the car was looking in both directions. While the design was certainly distinctive, it raised several practical issues. The car's compact size meant limited interior space, and the seating arrangement was uncomfortable for longer journeys. Furthermore, the 14-horsepower engine, mounted in the middle of the car beneath the rear bench seat, was grossly underpowered. It struggled to propel the Janus beyond city speeds, making it unsuitable for anything other than short urban trips. The engine's performance was barely sufficient for the car's weight, and it took an agonizingly long time to accelerate, which was a major drawback even for the standards of the time. The Janus's aesthetic also worked against it. Its unusual, boxy shape, combined with the fact that it looked almost identical from the front and rear, gave it an odd, toy-like appearance. While some drivers were charmed by its eccentric look, the vast majority found it awkward and unattractive. The design did not fit the growing trend towards more streamlined, modern cars, and it failed to generate mass appeal. Another significant problem with the Janus was its safety and stability. The vehicle's lightweight, combined with its small wheels and short wheelbase, made it difficult to handle, especially on rough or uneven roads. The car had a tendency to feel unstable at higher speeds, not that it often reached them given its underpowered engine. Moreover, the thin body panels offered little protection in the event of an accident, which was becoming a growing concern as safety standards began to improve in the late 1950s. Despite these drawbacks, Zündapp hoped that the Janus's low price and quirky charm would attract budget-conscious consumers. However, the market was already crowded with more practical and better-performing alternatives. Competitors like the BMW Isetta and the Messerschmitt KR200, which also targeted the microcar segment, offered similarly compact designs but with greater reliability and a more conventional appearance. The Isetta, in particular, was a much more polished product, offering better handling and slightly more power, making it a preferred choice among consumers looking for a small city car. Ultimately, the Zündapp Janus was a victim of its own unconventionality. While the concept was creative, the execution left much to be desired. The car's combination of weak performance, uncomfortable seating, and strange design failed to resonate with the broader public. As a result, production ended after just 1 year, with only around 6,902 units ever produced. The Janus did not live on long enough to evolve or improve, and Zündapp, facing financial difficulties, abandoned car production altogether, returning to its roots as a motorcycle manufacturer. In retrospect, the Zündapp Janus is remembered more for its novelty than for its practical contributions to automotive history. While it did not succeed commercially, the car has become a beloved oddity among collectors and enthusiasts of rare and unusual vehicles. Today, the Janus remains a quirky symbol of 1950s automotive experimentation, an era when manufacturers were willing to take bold risks, even if they didn't always pay off. The Subaru 360, produced from 1958 to 1971, holds a special place in automotive history as Japan's first mass-produced car. However, despite its significance in the early years of Japan's automotive industry, the car earned a less than flattering reputation for being underpowered, cramped, and unsafe, particularly when introduced to the American market. The Subaru 360 was designed to fit within the Japanese K-car regulations, which allowed for small, lightweight vehicles with engines under 360 cubic centimeters. At just over 3 meters in length and weighing around 450 kilograms, the 360 was incredibly compact. Powered by a 356 cubic centimeter, two-cylinder, two-stroke engine that produced a mere 16 horsepower, the car was extremely underpowered even by the standards of the time. Its top speed was just around 60 miles per hour, 96 kilometers per hour, and its acceleration was slow, taking over 37 seconds to reach 50 miles per hour, 80 kilometers per hour. While this was sufficient for Japan's post-war urban streets, where speed limits were lower and traffic more congested, it was far from adequate for highways or long-distance travel. One of the reasons for the car's initial success in Japan was its affordability. The Subaru 360 was marketed as the people's car, offering an affordable, practical solution to Japan's growing need for personal transportation in the post-war era. Its air-cooled engine was simple and easy to maintain, and its fuel efficiency was impressive, making it an economical choice for daily commuting. It also had a certain charm, earning the nickname the Ladybug for its rounded, beetle-like shape. Despite its limitations, it became a popular vehicle in Japan due to its low cost, compact size, and suitability for city driving. However, the Subaru 360's problems became glaringly obvious when it was introduced to the U.S. market in the late 1960s by Malcolm Bricklin, who saw an opportunity to market it as a budget car. American consumers, accustomed to larger, more powerful vehicles, were immediately put off by the 360's tiny size, sluggish performance, and peculiar appearance. Worse still, the car's safety record was abysmal. In 1969, Consumer Reports tested the Subaru 360 and gave it one of the harshest reviews ever, calling it unacceptably unsafe. The report criticized the car's poor crashworthiness, noting that the thin body panels and lack of structural reinforcement provided virtually no protection in a collision. The lightweight body, combined with the car's narrow wheels and inadequate suspension, made handling treacherous at higher speeds, particularly on uneven roads. The poor safety rating was a death sentence for the 360 in the U.S., where increasing concern about vehicle safety standards was becoming a major issue. By the late 1960s, American consumers were starting to demand more from their cars in terms of both performance and safety, and the 360 fell short on both counts. The car's underpowered engine was insufficient for America's larger roads and higher speed driving conditions, and its tiny size made it feel unstable on the highway. Another factor that contributed to the Subaru 360's failure in the U.S. was the rising competition from other small, economical cars that offered better performance, safety, and reliability. The Volkswagen Beetle, for example, was already well established in the American market by the time the 360 arrived, and it provided a much more refined driving experience. The Beetle's larger engine, sturdier construction, and better safety ratings made it far more appealing to American consumers, leaving little room for the Subaru 360 to make an impact. Despite its failure in the U.S., the Subaru 360 continued to sell in Japan until the early 1970s. It was ultimately replaced by more modern and capable models as Subaru's engineering and design improved. The car's legacy, however, is significant, particularly in Japan, where it is remembered as a symbol of the country's rapid post-war recovery and its burgeoning automotive industry. It helped establish Subaru as a car manufacturer, laying the groundwork for the company's future successes with more advanced and better engineered vehicles. In retrospect, the Subaru 360 was a product of its time and place, well-suited to the specific needs of Japanese urban drivers, but woefully inadequate for the American market. Its small size, limited power, and lack of safety features doomed it to failure in the US, where it remains a quirky footnote in automotive history. Nonetheless, the 360 remains an important chapter in Subaru's development, marking the company's transition from aircraft manufacturer to a player in the global automotive industry. The Hillman Avenger, produced between 1970 and 1981, was introduced by the Roots Group, later Chrysler Europe, as a small family car aimed at competing with more established models like the Ford Escort and Vauxhall Viva. While the Avenger enjoyed some initial success in various markets, including the UK and South America, it ultimately struggled to maintain a strong foothold due to a range of issues, particularly poor build quality, reliability problems, and a lack of innovation that left it behind its competitors. The Avenger was marketed as a versatile and affordable car, available in several body styles including saloons and estates. At its launch, the Avenger seemed like a solid competitor in the small car segment, and it offered some appealing features, such as a relatively comfortable ride, decent handling for the time, and an engine lineup that ranged from economical 1.2-liter units to sportier 1.5-liter options. The car was also relatively attractive in terms of design, with a straightforward and modern look that resonated with buyers seeking a no-nonsense family car. However, as the years went on, the car's flaws began to emerge. One of the most critical problems was its poor build quality. Many Avenger owners reported frequent breakdowns, especially in models produced in the early 1970s. The car was prone to mechanical issues, with particular trouble stemming from its electrical system, which was unreliable and prone to failures. In addition, the Avenger's suspension system often showed signs of wear early, leading to a less comfortable driving experience over time. Rust was another significant problem for the Avenger, especially in markets with harsh weather conditions. The car's bodywork was not well protected against corrosion, and many owners found that their vehicles began to rust prematurely, particularly around the wheel arches and undercarriage. This issue was exacerbated by the fact that the car's paintwork was also subpar, offering little in the way of long-term protection from the elements. As a result, the Avenger's durability was severely compromised, and its resale value plummeted as rust became an endemic problem. Beyond these quality control issues, the Avenger also struggled in terms of performance and innovation. While its early engine options were adequate for the time, they quickly became outdated as competitors released more powerful and efficient engines. By the mid-1970s, the Avenger's performance was no longer competitive, especially when compared to newer models from Ford, Vauxhall, and even European imports like Volkswagen and Peugeot. The car's engines were often criticized for being underpowered, particularly in the heavier estate versions, and their fuel efficiency lagged behind more modern rivals. Another area where the Avenger failed to keep up was in the realm of innovation. During the 1970s, the automotive industry saw significant advancements in safety, comfort, and technology. However, the Avenger received minimal updates throughout its production run. Its interior remained relatively basic, lacking the refinement and features that were becoming more common in small family cars. Competitors were introducing more sophisticated suspension systems, better braking technology, and improved fuel efficiency, but the Avenger seemed stuck in the past, with only minor tweaks to its design and mechanics. The Avenger's marketing also did not live up to its promises. Chrysler Europe positioned the car as a modern, reliable option for the everyday driver, but as reliability problems and complaints about quality began to surface, the Avenger's reputation suffered. Buyers who had been drawn in by the car's initial affordability and styling found themselves dealing with frequent trips to the repair shop, leading to frustration and dissatisfaction. Over time, this tarnished the Avenger's image, and sales began to decline. In some markets, particularly in South America, where it was sold under the Dodge and Volkswagen brands, the Avenger fared somewhat better. However, even in these regions, the car was seen as a basic, low-cost option rather than a standout performer. Its success was more a result of limited competition in these areas than any inherent superiority of the vehicle itself. By the early 1980s, it was clear that the Hillman Avenger could no longer compete in the increasingly crowded small car market. Chrysler Europe, which had been struggling financially, was taken over by Peugeot in 1978, and the Avenger's production was gradually wound down. It was replaced by more modern and better-built models, and the Avenger was largely forgotten as automotive history moved on. In the end, the Hillman Avenger is remembered as a car with potential that was never fully realized. While it enjoyed a brief period of popularity, its poor build quality, lack of innovation, and ongoing reliability issues ensured that it could not compete with more advanced and dependable rivals. The Volkswagen Type 3, introduced in 1961 and produced until 1973, was initially seen as a promising expansion of Volkswagen's lineup. It was designed to offer more space and versatility than the iconic Beetle, while still retaining the rear-engine, air-cooled setup that had defined Volkswagen cars for decades. With its relatively simple and functional design, available in sedan, fastback, and station wagon variants, the Type 3 aimed to cater to families seeking a compact car with a bit more practicality than the Beetle. However, despite its early promise, the Type 3 ultimately fell short of expectations and was overshadowed by more advanced competitors in both Volkswagen's own lineup and the broader market. At the time of its launch, the Type 3 was considered a stylish and practical car. It featured a low profile thanks to the pancake engine, which allowed for more luggage space in both the front and rear of the car. This design innovation gave it an edge over the Beetle in terms of usability, especially for families who needed more room for passengers and cargo. The Type 3 was also one of the first Volkswagens to offer a fully independent rear suspension, which improved handling and ride comfort compared to the Beetle's swing axle system. However, the Type 3's 1500cc and later 1600cc air-cooled engines, while reliable, were seen as underpowered. These engines produced modest horsepower, and as automotive technology progressed throughout the 1960s, the Type 3 began to lag behind competitors that offered more powerful and fuel-efficient engines. This became especially problematic as cars from other manufacturers, including European and Japanese automakers, began to emphasize performance and efficiency in ways that the Type 3 couldn't match. By the late 1960s, even Volkswagen's own Beetle, with its legendary simplicity and charm, was often seen as more desirable than the Type 3. Particularly because the Beetle had a strong cultural and emotional appeal that the more utilitarian Type 3 lacked. Another significant issue that contributed to the Type 3's decline was its lack of modern safety features. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, car buyers were becoming more safety conscious, especially in markets like the United States, where regulations were becoming stricter. The Type 3's design, rooted in the same basic layout as the Beetle, didn't allow for easy integration of newer safety features such as crumple zones, modern braking systems, or advanced seatbelt mechanisms. While it wasn't considered unsafe by the standards of its era, it couldn't keep up with the increasingly rigorous safety expectations that began to dominate the automotive industry during the 1970s. Another problem was that the Type 3 didn't offer a significant improvement in driving dynamics over the Beetle. Though larger and more spacious, it still had the same basic handling characteristics of a rear-engine car with a relatively small engine. It wasn't particularly quick or agile, and it lacked the refinement of more advanced front-engine, front-wheel drive cars that were starting to gain popularity in Europe. As automakers like Renault, Fiat, and even Volkswagen itself with the Golf began to shift towards more modern, efficient designs, the Type 3's layout felt increasingly outdated. Additionally, the Type 3 struggled to stand out in Volkswagen's growing portfolio. The Beetle, which had already cemented itself as a cultural icon, continued to outsell the Type 3 by a wide margin, thanks to its lower price, familiarity, and strong fan base. Meanwhile, Volkswagen was also working on new models that would soon eclipse the Type 3. In particular, the introduction of the Golf in 1974, with its forward-thinking front-engine, front-wheel drive configuration, rendered the Type 3 and other rear-engine models obsolete. By the time the Type 3 was discontinued in 1973, it was clear that it had been overtaken by more modern cars in terms of both design and performance. Though it had filled a niche for Volkswagen in the early 1960s as a larger, more practical alternative to the Beetle, the Type 3's inherent limitations, particularly its underpowered engine, aging rear-engine layout, and lack of modern safety features meant that it could no longer compete effectively as the automotive industry evolved. In the end, the Type 3 is often remembered as a solid, functional car that ultimately failed to leave a lasting impact on the market. While it was by no means a bad vehicle, it lacked the innovation and character needed to stand out in an increasingly competitive field. Today, the Type 3 is seen as a lesser-known chapter in Volkswagen's history, overshadowed by the success of both the Beetle and the Golf, which went on to define the company's future. The Mercury Comet, produced from 1960 to 1977, had a long production run, but its legacy is mixed, with many seeing it as a car that failed to stand out in an increasingly competitive market. Initially designed as an upmarket compact car positioned between Ford's economy cars and full-size vehicles, the Comet was intended to offer both style and affordability. However, over its lifespan, the Comet struggled to make a significant impression on consumers, particularly as competition increased in the compact and mid-size segments. While it had some initial success, particularly in its early years, the Comet ultimately fell victim to its bland design, quality control issues, and mechanical problems, including rust. The early Comet models were not initially marketed as Mercury vehicles, but were instead intended to be part of the Edsel lineup. However, when the Edsel brand was discontinued, the Comet was introduced as a standalone model in 1960 without any direct association with Mercury. The Comet's early styling, featuring a long hood and sleek lines, helped it stand out somewhat from other compact cars, and it offered a comfortable ride with decent interior space for its size. In the early 1960s, the Comet found a customer base among buyers looking for a more refined alternative to Ford's Falcon or Chevrolet's Corvair, especially since the car had a touch of upscale appeal. However, as the 1960s progressed, the Comet's design started to feel increasingly outdated. By 1964, the Comet became more firmly integrated into the Mercury brand, and the model grew in size, moving toward the intermediate category. This shift didn't help its case as it began to lose the compact, economical appeal it once had. The later Comets were seen as somewhat uninspired in terms of both design and performance. The styling was conservative and lacked the flair that was becoming more popular in the muscle car and sporty sedan markets during the mid to late 1960s. One of the key factors behind the Comet's eventual decline was the stiff competition it faced, both from within the Ford family and from rival automakers. Ford's own Mustang, introduced in 1964, overshadowed the Comet in terms of performance and style, drawing in buyers who wanted a sportier and more exciting car. Meanwhile, the mid-size car segment was becoming crowded with more innovative and powerful models from General Motors, Chrysler, and even AMC. As a result, the Comet struggled to define its identity and appeal to a specific group of buyers. In addition to design issues, the Comet began to suffer from quality control problems, particularly in the 1970s. During this period, many American automakers faced significant challenges with rust and mechanical reliability, and the Comet was no exception. Complaints about rust, particularly in the later years of its production, were common. The car's body panels and undercarriage were prone to corrosion, especially in regions with harsh winters, where salt on the roads accelerated rusting. This issue became a major drawback for potential buyers, especially as competitors started to offer more durable vehicles. Mechanical problems also plagued the Comet, particularly in its later models. Engine issues, transmission failures, and electrical problems were not uncommon, further diminishing the car's reputation. As consumers began to demand more reliable and efficient vehicles in the wake of the 1973 oil crisis, the Comet's aging technology and lackluster fuel economy made it less appealing. Buyers were increasingly looking for cars that offered both reliability and modern features, areas where the Comet struggled to keep up. By the time the Comet was discontinued in 1977, it had largely become a relic of the past. While it had a respectable run, its final years were marked by a lack of innovation and an inability to adapt to changing market demands. The Comet's design had become stale, and its mechanical issues, particularly with rust, tarnished its legacy. In retrospect, the Comet is remembered as a car that had potential but ultimately failed to make a lasting impact. It couldn't compete with more exciting or reliable offerings from other automakers, and as a result, it faded from memory as just another mid-tier American car from the 1960s and 1970s. Today, the Mercury Comet holds a modest place in automotive history. Some classic car enthusiasts appreciate its nostalgic appeal, particularly the earlier models from the 1960s. But it's not a car that enjoys widespread admiration. Its legacy is one of missed opportunities, as it struggled to carve out a distinct identity or deliver the kind of performance and reliability that could have made it a standout in a crowded field. Instead, the Comet is often seen as a car that was simply there for nearly 2 decades without ever leaving a lasting impression. The Fiat 128, introduced in 1969, was initially hailed as a groundbreaking car due to its front-wheel drive layout and compact, efficient design. It was one of the first mass-market cars to feature this layout, which allowed for more interior space and better handling than many of its rear-wheel drive competitors. At its launch, the 128 was celebrated for its sharp handling, nimble performance, and innovative engineering, making it a strong contender in the European small car market. However, despite these early accolades, the Fiat 128's reputation quickly deteriorated, primarily due to its poor durability and frequent mechanical problems, especially in harsher climates. One of the key reasons for the Fiat 128's initial success was its technical innovation. Fiat's engineers, led by Dante Giacosa, designed the car with a transverse engine and front-wheel drive system, which at the time was quite advanced. This setup maximized interior space while maintaining a compact overall footprint, making the 128 practical for urban driving. It also boasted independent suspension at all 4 wheels, which gave it superior ride comfort and handling compared to many other small cars of the era. In terms of driving dynamics, the 128 was a standout, offering lively performance from its small displacement engines and precise steering, making it a fun car to drive. Despite these positive attributes, the Fiat 128 quickly became notorious for rusting, which was perhaps its most significant downfall. Fiat had long struggled with corrosion issues, particularly in cars exported to Northern European and North American markets, where road salt and wet weather exacerbated the problem. The 128th was no exception. Owners frequently complained about rust forming on body panels, door sills, and even critical structural areas like the chassis and suspension mounts. This corrosion often appeared within just a few years of ownership, particularly in regions with harsh winters or humid climates. For many, the car's tendency to rust so quickly overshadowed its mechanical innovations. Mechanical reliability was another major issue with the Fiat 128. Although the car's engine and drivetrain were advanced for the time, they were prone to breakdowns and required frequent maintenance. The engine, while peppy and responsive, was often plagued by overheating issues, especially in models that were poorly maintained. Additionally, the 128's electrical system was a constant source of frustration for owners, with frequent failures in wiring, lights, and other components. Fiat's overall build quality during this period was inconsistent, and the 128 was no exception. Owners often faced an array of minor but irritating problems, from malfunctioning switches to leaking seals, all of which added up to a frustrating ownership experience. In colder climates, the Fiat 128's reliability issues were even more pronounced. The car's delicate components in thin sheet metal struggled to cope with the extreme conditions of winter driving. In places like Scandinavia, Canada, and northern parts of the US, the Fiat 128 was known to suffer from poor cold start performance, as well as increased wear and tear on its engine and drivetrain. Combined with its notorious rusting issues, these problems made the Fiat 128 a less appealing choice for buyers in regions where durability and reliability were paramount. Another factor that contributed to the Fiat 128's eventual decline was the emergence of stronger competitors. During the 1970s, many European and Japanese manufacturers began to introduce similarly sized front-wheel drive cars that offered better reliability, build quality, and durability. Models like the Volkswagen Golf and Honda Civic quickly became popular alternatives, as they provided comparable levels of practicality and performance, but without the rust and mechanical headaches associated with the Fiat 128. As these competitors gained ground, the 128's shortcomings became more glaring, and its sales began to decline. While Fiat made several attempts to address the 1.28's issues with periodic updates and improvements, the car's reputation for rust and unreliability persisted. Even though it remained in production until 1985, by the time the 1980s arrived, the Fiat 128 was largely seen as outdated and uncompetitive. Its once revolutionary design had been surpassed by newer, more reliable models, and Fiat's reputation for producing rust-prone, fragile cars was firmly cemented in the minds of consumers. Despite its decline, the Fiat 128 did leave a lasting legacy in automotive history. Its front-wheel drive layout and transverse engine design were influential, and many automakers adopted similar configurations in their small cars in the years that followed. In this sense, the 128 was ahead of its time, even if its execution left much to be desired. The AMC Hornet, produced from 1970 to 1977, was an affordable compact car that filled a niche for American consumers seeking a smaller, more economical vehicle compared to the larger gas guzzlers that dominated the market at the time. As AMC's attempt to compete in a rapidly changing automotive landscape, the Hornet was designed to be versatile, offered in a variety of body styles, including sedans, wagons, and hatchbacks. However, despite its initial promise, the Hornet struggled to stand out due to its unremarkable performance, plain styling, and worsening mechanical reliability, issues that became more pronounced as the 1970s wore on. At the time of its launch, the AMC Hornet did manage to attract attention for being one of the more affordable compact cars, priced lower than many of its direct competitors from the big three automakers, Ford, GM, and Chrysler. Its low cost of entry made it an attractive option for budget-conscious buyers, particularly during the fuel-conscious early 1970s. But while affordability was a strong selling point, it also came with some notable drawbacks. The Hornet's performance was middling at best, with engines that lacked the power or refinement of those offered by competitors. Even in its sportier SC/360 version, which featured a 360 cubic inch V8 engine, the Hornet failed to deliver the excitement or driving dynamics expected from performance cars at the time. Styling was another area where the Hornet fell short. While not offensively bad, its design was plain and unadventurous, especially when compared to the more daring looks of other compact cars like the Ford Pinto or Chevrolet Vega. AMC's conservative approach to the Hornet's aesthetics meant that it didn't have the visual appeal needed to stand out in a crowded market. The boxy shape and generic front fascia gave the Hornet an appearance that was functional but forgettable. As the decade progressed and other automakers introduced more daring and modern designs, the Hornet began to look increasingly outdated. One of the most significant challenges the AMC Hornet faced was its poor fuel economy, a critical flaw during the 1970s when the oil crisis hit and gas prices skyrocketed. While the Hornet was smaller than the traditional full-size cars of the era, it still consumed more fuel than many of the emerging compact and subcompact cars, particularly those from Japanese manufacturers, which offered much better mileage. The Hornet's engines, especially the V8 options, were not tuned for efficiency, and the car's relatively heavy body further detracted from its fuel-saving potential. This put the Hornet at a significant disadvantage when fuel efficiency became one of the primary concerns for car buyers during the mid-1970s. Compounding these issues was AMC's declining quality control throughout the decade. As one of the smaller automakers in the United States, AMC struggled financially, and this began to affect the reliability and overall build quality of their vehicles, including the Hornet. Owners frequently complained about mechanical issues, ranging from transmission problems to electrical failures and rust. The Hornet's durability was particularly suspect in regions with harsher climates, where rust could form quickly on the car's body and undercarriage. Over time, these issues became more and more common, contributing to the Hornet's waning reputation. AMC's financial troubles meant that the company couldn't afford to invest in significant upgrades or redesigns for the Hornet during its production run. While competitors continually refreshed their models to stay relevant, the Hornet remained largely unchanged throughout the 1970s. This left it trailing behind in terms of technology, safety, and comfort. For example, while many other manufacturers began incorporating advanced safety features and more efficient engines, the Hornet remained stuck with outdated technology and design choices. By the late 1970s, the Hornet was no longer able to compete effectively in the increasingly competitive compact car market. Ultimately, the AMC Hornet's failure can be attributed to a combination of factors. Its unremarkable performance, uninspired styling, and lack of fuel efficiency made it a tough sell during a time when consumers were demanding more from their compact cars. Additionally, AMC's declining quality control and inability to keep pace with industry trends meant that the Hornet's shortcomings were never adequately addressed. By the time production ended in 1977, the Hornet had become and also ran in the compact car segment, overshadowed by more modern, reliable, and efficient competitors. Despite its shortcomings, the Hornet did have some lasting influence. Its platform was later used as the basis for the AMC Concord and Spirit, and its rugged simplicity found a niche among drivers who valued affordability above all else. The Mazda R360, produced between 1960 and 1966, holds the distinction of being Mazda's first ever production car, marking the company's entry into the automotive industry. As a K car designed to fit within Japan's strict size and engine regulations for small vehicles, the R360 was engineered to be an ultra-compact, economical mode of transportation for city driving. With its small dimensions and minimalist design, it was a product of post-war Japan's focus on affordability and efficiency. However, while it managed to sell relatively well within its domestic market, the R360's limitations in performance and practicality, especially in non-urban environments, significantly restricted its success outside Japan. At the heart of the R360's appeal was its affordability. As a K car, it was subject to lower taxes and registration fees, making it an attractive option for first-time car buyers and those living in Japan's rapidly growing cities. The car was equipped with a two-cylinder, air-cooled engine that produced just 16 horsepower. This minimal power output, combined with its incredibly lightweight, approximately 380 kilograms or 837 pounds, allowed the R360 to be relatively nimble in stop-and-go city traffic. For short trips around town or commuting through narrow, congested streets, the car was adequate. The low production cost allowed Mazda to sell the R360 at a competitive price, making it one of the most affordable cars on the Japanese market. However, the very characteristics that made the R360 cheap and efficient in urban environments also became its Achilles heel when it came to broader appeal. With a top speed of around 52 miles per hour, 85 kilometers per hour, the R360 was woefully underpowered for anything beyond short city trips. Its tiny engine struggled on highways or when climbing hills, making it impractical for rural areas or long-distance travel. Additionally, with seating for just 2 adults, or 4 in a tight squeeze, the R360 offered little in the way of comfort or space, further limiting its usefulness as a family car or for carrying any significant amount of cargo. The R360's compact size also presented safety concerns, especially in markets outside of Japan where larger vehicles dominated the roads. While K cars like the R360 were well suited for Japan's narrow streets and densely populated urban areas, they appeared dangerously small and fragile when compared to the larger sedans and station wagons popular in other parts of the world. The R360's tiny engine and minimalistic design meant it lacked any of the safety features that were becoming more common in larger cars at the time, such as crumple zones, seat belts, or reinforced frames. This made the car highly vulnerable in accidents, particularly at higher speeds. Mazda also faced stiff competition within the K car segment itself. By the time the R360 was introduced, several other Japanese manufacturers were already producing similarly priced and sized vehicles. The Subaru 360, for example, was released 2 years earlier and had already established itself as a popular choice among budget-conscious buyers. Other companies like Suzuki and Honda also entered the market with more refined or better-equipped offerings, which eroded some of the R360's initial appeal. While Mazda tried to keep the R360 relevant by introducing minor updates and improvements over the years, it struggled to maintain a competitive edge in an increasingly crowded market. Outside Japan, the R360 had even fewer prospects. Its small size, limited power, and lack of practicality meant that it was never seriously considered for export to markets like Europe or the United States, where cars were expected to handle a wider variety of driving conditions. The R360's primary appeal, its affordability within Japan's K-car regulations, didn't translate well to international buyers who demanded more power, space, and comfort from their vehicles. Additionally, by the time the R360 was introduced, European and American manufacturers were producing compact cars that were still larger, more powerful, and more versatile than the K cars coming out of Japan. Another issue with the R360 was its build quality. As Mazda's first foray into automobile manufacturing, the company lacked the experience and expertise that more established automakers had developed over decades of car production. This inexperience showed in the R360, as early models were prone to mechanical issues and build quality inconsistencies. Engine reliability, in particular, was a recurring problem, with a small two-cylinder motor often requiring frequent repairs or servicing. For a car that was supposed to represent affordable, trouble-free transportation, these mechanical flaws diminished its appeal over time. The Panhard Dyna Z, produced in France from 1954 to 1959, is often remembered for its innovative engineering and distinctive design, but ultimately it struggled to find a place in a competitive automotive market. One of the standout features of the Dyna Z was its lightweight construction, which utilized an aluminum body to keep weight to a minimum. This design choice was ahead of its time, as it emphasized fuel efficiency during an era when the automotive industry was beginning to recognize the importance of economy. However, the car's advantages in weight and efficiency were overshadowed by significant drawbacks that hindered its overall success. Central to the Dyna Z's failure was its underwhelming engine performance. The car was powered by a small, two-cylinder, air-cooled engine that produced a mere 42 horsepower. While this might have been adequate for urban driving, it left much to be desired in terms of acceleration and speed. Competing vehicles, including those from more established manufacturers like Citroën and Renault, offered significantly more power and better performance, which quickly outclassed the Dyna Z. As a result, potential buyers looking for a reliable and spirited driving experience often opted for more powerful alternatives. The combination of limited power and lightweight design contributed to a driving experience that felt unremarkable, leaving many consumers disappointed. In addition to its performance shortcomings, the Dyna Z's unique design was a double-edged sword. Panhard aimed to create a car that stood out, and the Dyna Z's curvaceous body and avant-garde aesthetics achieved that goal. However, the unconventional styling was polarizing. Some admired its futuristic look, while others found it unattractive and odd. This divided public perception restricted its appeal in a market that often favored more traditional automotive designs. Potential customers may have been put off by the Dyna Z's appearance, which limited its reach in an already competitive segment filled with attractive options. The marketing of the Dyna Z also played a role in its challenges. While Panhard promoted the vehicle's lightweight design and fuel efficiency, it struggled to communicate the benefits effectively against competitors that had stronger brand recognition and more robust marketing strategies. The company's reputation for quality was not as established as that of its rivals, making it difficult for the Dyna Z to gain traction in a market increasingly focused on performance, style, and reliability. Furthermore, the company's small size limited its resources for extensive advertising campaigns, which could have helped boost visibility and consumer interest. Additionally, the Dyna Z was priced competitively, but this only partially mitigated its performance issues. Buyers looking for a budget-friendly option often found better value in larger cars that offered more space and better power without a significant increase in price. The Dyna Z's combination of compact size and lack of power made it less practical for many families, further diminishing its appeal in a market that increasingly favored spacious and versatile vehicles. As the automotive landscape evolved during the late 1950s, consumer preferences shifted towards more powerful and spacious cars that could accommodate growing families and the demands of daily life. The Dyna Z, with its unique but polarizing design, lightweight structure, and weak engine, struggled to adapt to these changing expectations. While it may have initially captured attention for its innovative features, It ultimately fell short of competing against the more versatile and powerful offerings from other manufacturers. Despite its failure to achieve widespread success, the Panhard Dyna Z remains an interesting piece of automotive history. It represents an era of innovation in design and engineering, highlighting the ongoing quest for fuel efficiency and lightweight construction. The lessons learned from the Dyna Z continue to inform automotive design, particularly in the realm of eco-friendly vehicles today. Although it may not have been the commercial success that Panhard hoped for, the Dyna Z's contributions to automotive engineering and design remain noteworthy, serving as a reminder of the delicate balance between innovation and market demand in the automotive world.